And now, aviation weather around Alaska. Season's greetings. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan coming to you from the National Weather Service, and this is your Alaska aviation weather outlook for the upcoming Christmas weekend holiday. And we're certainly going to be in an active weather pattern. A strong area of low pressure is lifting out of the North Pacific, and it's going to ride up into the Western Gulf by the time we get into Saturday, and then pull back across the Kenai Peninsula into Cook Inlet. And if that's not enough, there's going to be another area of low pressure Christmas Day coming up out of the North Pacific and then impacting the Panhandle with additional wind and moderate to locally heavy precipitation. But the system we have to contend with here Saturday, Sunday will be quite impactful across much of the southwest, western portions of the mainland, along south central areas, all of the Gulf Coast, and in through the Panhandle. This system will be accompanied by a very strong storm force front that's going to bring storm force winds in the marine areas along the northern, northeastern Gulf in through the outer Panhandle, southern parts of the Panhandle. High wind watches in effect here for Saturday into Sunday. Potential for heavy snowfall, northern Panhandle, also the potential for heavy snowfall, especially the intercoastal mountains along the northern Gulf here, up through Cordova, Valdez, down in through the eastern Kenai. And some of that snow may actually spill back over into the Anchorage area, especially Saturday night through Sunday morning. So stay tuned to later forecasts there. In the meantime, blizzard warnings are in effect through at least early Saturday afternoon along the Bristol Bay coastal areas, and moisture streaming northward is going to produce some moderate to locally heavy snow across areas of the southwest and western interior. As winds increase, though, there will be blowing and drifting snow as well. And so we expect IFR conditions here to extend up into the western interior. By Saturday afternoon, areas here along the Gulf will see IFR conditions, including northern Panhandle, intercoastal mountains of the Panhandle there, inner channels, and then pretty widespread IFR extending through the southwest interior up into the Seward Peninsula, Kotzebue Sound. And for Sunday morning, with this frontal system here and the low back through this region, we expect IFR conditions to continue along the intercoastal mountains of the Panhandle, especially up through the north, Chilkoot and White Passes, back across the Wrangell St. Elias Mountains in through northern Prince William Sound into the upper half of Cook Inlet and across the Alaska Range into the southwest interior, Norton Sound, and on up toward the Bering Strait. Sunday afternoon, still lingering areas of IFR, intercoastal mountains here along the northern Gulf, in through the northern Panhandle and the inner channels as you go further east toward the British Columbia interior. And then we still see areas of IFR up along the south slopes of the Brooks Range back toward the Seward Peninsula. So again, flying will be difficult, if not impossible, in certain areas at times. Atituvik Pass should see MVFR conditions become VFR for Saturday. Same thing, Adigan Pass, MVFR becoming VFR. Lake Clark, Merrill, socked in with IFR conditions. There will be heavy snowfall in through areas of the Alaska Range with this system, along with turbulent conditions with the stronger winds. Rainy Pass, IFR, maybe becoming MVFR Saturday afternoon. Windy Pass should generally hold on to MVFR conditions, but we're going to have, when I show you the turbulence map up across the Alaska Range, there's going to be some potential for some moderate to even isolated severe turbulence, as winds aloft will be quite strong coming through there. Isabel Pass, MVFR, but again, winds through the gaps and along the ridge lines will be pretty strong with turbulence likely in areas. Mentasta Pass should generally see VFR conditions hold through the day Saturday. Tanita Pass, MVFR becoming IFR as that moisture lifts further north from the Gulf associated with that low pressure and frontal system. Portage Pass, IFR is anticipated, with the exception there toward the west entrance remaining MVFR, but IFR definitely Portage Pass eastward out across Prince William Sound. And then Chilkoot and White in the northern Panhandle will be socked in with IFR conditions, winter storm conditions with heavier snowfall, certainly likely with this system. So low pressure that's going to lift, the initial low is going to come up here south of the Alaska Peninsula, go up into the Gulf, and then pull back toward the Kenai and Cook Inlet. Ahead of it, we see the freezing levels aloft bumping upward 4,000 to 6,000 feet. So Many of the coastal areas, initially here along the western coast of the Gulf, we may see snow, but that'll change to rain. With the warmer air coming in through the Panhandle, the outer areas and southern Panhandle will see mainly wind-driven rain. But in the north, where it stays colder, that's where the accumulating snows will be heaviest. And as we get that second system, there's actually 1-2 punch low coming up Christmas Day into Tuesday. It'll likely draw even a little warmer air further north. But for the meantime, this initial setup will be the low that comes into the Gulf, pulls back to the west, and then cuts across the Kenai and Cook Inlet before drifting and dissipating as it works its way further into the interior. So on Saturday, we expect a very strong front associated with this low. It's going to have storm force winds along it with heavier precipitation as it encounters especially the intercoastal mountains. So we expect icing above 4,000 feet along the coast, further south, deeper into the Gulf and North Pacific above 6,000 feet. And then here in the interior, this batch of moisture, this is the initial surge that has come in to create the blizzard conditions along the Bristol Bay coastline for the Saturday afternoon into Sunday afternoon into Saturday afternoon. That moisture will continue expanding northward with gusty northeast to north winds on the backside of this low. So this is going to translate to quite a bit of wind with the system, especially out across areas of the Gulf and even in through the interior. Upper level jet stream, we have a negatively tilted trough. It's angled this way with 115 knot jet max in the North Pacific south of the Gulf and winds 95 to near 100 knots coming in across the southeast mainland. And then broad belt of winds in the mid-levels at 700 millibars or 9,000 feet, anywhere from around 50 to as high as 75, 80 knots, this southerly flow into the Panhandle, into areas along the northwestern and north central Gulf. And then just a broader southerly flow on the order of 30, 40 knots across the mainland. And then on the backside of the low, strong flow there at 700 millibars or 9,000 feet from the north, 45 to 60 knots entering the eastern Aleutians. Now here's the real punch. When we look at 3,000 feet, we have the low circulation here, strong frontal system. Whenever you get those fronts butt up against the intercoastal mountains, it creates a barrier jet and actually increases the gradient. So we find winds at 3,000 feet in excess of 60 knots from the southern Panhandle, especially out here over the eastern Gulf, just west of Haida Gwaii. That's all going to translate back toward the northwest. So there will be a large area that has the potential for low-level wind shear and severe turbulence, surface to 6,000 feet from areas of the north central Gulf, down along the outer coast of the Panhandle, southern areas, Dixon Entrance, including Haida Gwaii. And the other thing to note with these stronger winds, also at the surface, marine areas here are going to be under some sort of probably storm warnings. So again, a potent system. In addition, heavier, moderate to heavy rainfall along the coast and heavier snows in through mountainous, intercoastal mountains, especially here around Prince William Sound, the eastern Kenai. So again, turbulence will be widespread back through the southwest and the Alaska Peninsula. Also coming up across the Alaska Range, we expect surface to 10,000 foot turbulence there, especially through the gaps, passes. And then in the interior south of the Brooks Range, surface to 4,000 foot turbulence along the Yukon River back through the southern portion of the Seward Peninsula.